Welcome back to another episode of Just Say It. My name is Chase Davis. I'm one of the pastors of the Well Church here in Boulder, Colorado, joined by my co-host, Matt Patrick. Matt, thanks for coming on today.
Oh, glad to be here.
I like treating you like a guest.
I know. Most do. Most don't want me around too long. Just a guest, in and out. Not here true. For a long time, just a good time.
Today we're going to be talking about, I think we're talking about violence. This was inspired by a recent sermon of Matt's closing Nehemiah 13. You can go find that on our website, boulderwell.org. Great sermon to wrap up our study of the book of Nehemiah. Before we get into that conversation, though, I wanted to make sure you knew about a few things coming up. First, we have an Essentials class coming up May 31st and June 7th. Those are Sundays. The classes will be offered on Sunday. What is Essentials class? It's basically an introduction to our church and Christian doctrine and application. So it's a 2-week class. It's good for people that are new to our church, people who are curious about the Christian faith, and also if you've just been at our church for a while, wanted to get a refresher on like Calvinism or something like that. Would love to have you join me there May 31st and June 7th. If you could RSVP on the Well app, that would be great. Help us out a lot. Also, coming up this summer, July 31st and August 1st and August 2nd, all 3 days, we're going to have our annual Burn the Ships Men's Conference. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have Dr. Stephen Wolf and Dr. Joe Rigney come out and equip guys. We have a lot of interest, a lot of buzz about it. You can go to boulderwell.org/burntheships to get your tickets today. Get them soon because we anticipate it selling out. So I hope you will sign up, buy a ticket, and we'll see you there. Should we get into our opening segment?
Yeah, we can do that.
Great. Why don't you go first? What did you mean by that? Tweet is our opening segment. If we were fancy, we'd have a graphic and like a noise or music. We are not, so what did you mean by that tweet? Matt, go first.
I'm just going to do one that you just reposted. You didn't even write this one.
Okay.
Okay. You reposted from Homeland Security.
Oh, yeah.
They posted a photo of a church. They said, "One homeland under God."
Oh, wow.
And they quoted Proverbs 3, 5-6, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. One nation under God."
Man, that's awesome.
So you were like, Homeland Security, worthy of a repost.
Dude.
And instead of, why did you tweet that? Why did you repost that?
I love that. I love when our national agencies and our national government promotes true religion. I think it's good for people. And King James Version in that post, too, which is super based.
Yeah.
No, I think it's great. Anytime I see that stuff pop up, it's so refreshing. It's so refreshing compared to what we had or what we could have under a leftist president who's promoting all sorts of nonsense on social media. Now we just get Bible verses promoting kind of heritage, Americana themes and encouraging the people to virtue. So I think this is a beautiful thing. That's why I posted it.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I think back like 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't have shared that if that would have been the government.
Yeah, probably not.
I mean, neither would I. I'm like, it's funny just how things have changed. That's what made me think of that.
Oh, okay, yeah. Things have changed, Matt.
They have changed.
People change, believe it or not. We want you to change, too. We want you to be born again in Jesus Christ if you are not. So please repent of your sins and believe and trust in the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay, Matt, I always like talking about this stuff because it's not off the wall. And it's not niche. It's just not what you would expect from a pastor.
Oh, gosh.
So it's not bad.
Okay.
4/15, April 15th. You tweeted, "The gray peptide market will not be shut down due to RFK moving 12 peptides from the Category 2 list to Category 1. People will still want the cheap stuff, but you will be able to buy these peptides in a much safer fashion for a price." What's happening here? What's going on? There's a lot here. I think if most people, and they're like, what does Pastor Matt tweet about? Is this the Pastor Matt at the Well Church? Anyways, I just wanted to
just keep people on their toes.
Yeah. So what does this mean? What is gray peptide markets?
Okay. So just really briefly, a little history so it makes sense. All of my like nutrition or peptide or whatever people out there, that they track all this stuff,
yep.
Right? So back in the Biden administration, what his FDA did, they never gave a good reason for it, as with many things that they did.
Sure.
They took about, I think it was like 19 peptides.
Okay.
off of what was called a Category 1 list, which is approved for human use, right? Doctors could write prescriptions for it. They took it off just overnight. Like, it was like doctors were using them, compounding pharmacies, all these things were using them. One day they were just gone.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And it was just no explanation, still to this day, has been given as to why. And they were doing a lot of really good things for a lot of people. And so RFK has basically looked at this and said, this is crazy. We're going to reverse this. I don't know why they're not doing all 19, but they're starting with 12. Maybe they'll do more.
Well, it's probably biblical,
Yeah.
the 12 disciples,
Yes,
the
that's
12
it.
tribes of Israel.
That's what he's thinking. Oh, man, there's so many jokes in there. So RFK came out and he announced, hey, he says by July, they're going to move those over. They're doing a study right now and I'm making sure they're all safe and all that kind of good stuff so the FDA can do it. What happened is, actually, it's very similar to Prohibition. When you took alcohol away,
Okay.
what ended up happening was kind of these gray markets, these underground bars, were popping up, and people found ways to get alcohol. Same thing happened with these peptides. People liked them enough.
Got it.
They found these things. So, like, when you're buying them, it says for research use only. And so it's very cheap to buy them that way versus through a doctor.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of dangers. I would not necessarily recommend that to people. So people are like, oh my gosh, the gray market, all those sites they're all going to get shut down. Like, that's not going to happen.
Okay.
They like, the Biden administration kind of ruined it actually by taking those off. They created a whole entire market that's like, I think it's over $1 billion market in the gray peptide world of like people buying that stuff through websites and all sorts of different stuff. It's weird. You have to use like Bitcoin to buy it and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, it's pretty sketchy.
Sure.
But people now know what things actually cost. So, so good luck getting rid of that.
Yeah. Right.
So
that makes sense.
I don't think it'll get shut down. I think it'll be harder, but
Yeah.
I don't see it getting shut down.
I'm really I'm always taken aback. Pastor Matt, if you don't know, listener or viewer, has a very keen awareness of cultural trends. He's typically too early for my taste, but he's aware of what's going on. What caught your eye about peptides? I know this is a deviation from violence, but like, how did you get into peptides, and then like, how did you decide we should? I'm going to promote this.
Yeah, I mean, so I was just curious into things like, I was exploring, I was doing my own blood work, all that kind of stuff. I was like into biohacking.
You were already into biohacking, okay?
Right. So that was just kind of the gateway, and then when I started reading the research and the literature on it, and I do have another job where that's part of my job is to read PubMed articles and stuff, and I was like, whoa, this stuff sounds crazy.
Right.
So I started researching it, diving into it, and now, actually, believe it or not, the word peptide is, I think last month was the #1 searched word on Google.
Wow.
So it's huge.
That's crazy.
It's going to be, it is massive, and it's just going to continue to grow.
Is there another one that's coming next? I mean, it feels like a big wave. Is there another wave that you're seeing?
Of like peptides?
Yeah, like another biohacking thing. I mean, because everybody's talking about this stuff, red light therapy, and other such things.
The biggest one by far is going to be Retatrutide by Eli Lilly. That's coming out probably at the end of this quarter.
Which is a peptide?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
It's a GLP triple agonist.
So like Ozempic.
Yes, but very different.
Got it.
I'd prefer people to be on that much more than Ozempic, but it's going to be it's going to be $1 trillion drug.
Wow.
And I think if we used it properly, we could actually cure obesity in the West.
Could we mandate Retatrutide for all American citizens over a certain BMI?
Under your administration, Chase.
Okay, great.
Your rule and reign,
Yeah.
we will.
It's a beneficence. It's a generous.
Yeah, it'll be
free
a social
blessing,
a social safety net, if you will.
Yes. Okay.
Anyways,
we've deviated too much. We're going to talk about violence today, physical violence, because in Nehemiah, at the end of it, Nehemiah lays hands on people, and not in like the spiritual sense of like praying
for you
or ordaining an elder or whatever it may be, or a deacon. It's literally like he's physically attacking people. I think our New Testament reading was from when Jesus braided a cord of whips from John, and so there is some violent imagery there as well.
Yep.
But a lot of Christians, I think, have questions about this. They've heard sermons from the Sermon on the Mount where they use the Sermon on the Mount to imply violence is never permissible, or essentially we should just be pacifist. So kind of let's let's talk about that, and
Yeah.
let's figure out how we can help Christians think through this.
Yeah, we decided to do it because in my sermon, actually, I actually prefer the King James versions of the verses. I think they just sound way cooler.
Sure.
And so, like, the verse, I got to it, and the text says, "If ye do so again, I will lay hands on you." And then you have, that's Nehemiah 13:21 and 13:25. Nehemiah contended with them and cursed them and smote certain of them and plucked off their hair.
Wow.
Right? So pretty intense. And in my sermon, I said, like, I had to engage the reality of, like, I know what you're thinking. Like, can I do that?
Sure.
Can
Especially guys.
Can I smote?
You know what's funny is in high school I would play doubles tennis. I know this is hoity-toity, but we would use the word smote all the time because we were Christians and we knew the King James, and we used our tennis rackets as swords. Anyways, keep going, Matt.
Yeah. And so I was just like, man, I want to get into this and go, when can you smote?
Sure. Yeah.
When can you, like, I think the pulling out the hair, I don't love that, but
sure, yeah, kind of low class, but you know,
it is what it is. But I was like, I know it's a question, and I don't have time to answer it here today. And so we were like, well, this would be a perfect topic for today.
Absolutely.
And so I think when I started thinking about it is when we get into it, there's a lot of pathways that we could go here, and we just did just war theory. So it actually kind of crosses over into that a little bit. So we got to kind of avoid that trap in our conversation, But what we see oftentimes is this idea that any sort of aggression from people is sinful.
Okay.
And that's clearly not true biblically.
Right.
Right? But that's something that's happened within the church. Any sort of aggressive nature, especially of the physical kind,
Right.
it must be sinful.
Right.
Right? And it's like, I've heard people even say it like, well, you know, yeah, Jesus braided the whips and whipped people, but you're not Jesus. He was perfect.
Sure.
So it makes you think you can handle that kind of responsibility well.
Right. Yeah.
And that's just kind of a silly, why would we do anything that Jesus did then?
Right. Yes, of course.
That doesn't work out that well.
Yep.
And so I kind of have like a thesis here for today, but like it says, Christianity, as we believe, is not pacifistic at all. It's not. The Bible history, Protestant giants like Luther and Calvin affirm violence is sometimes not only permitted, but actually required by God, especially, and here's the key thing, to protect the innocent, punish evil, and secure peace.
Yep.
And so maybe a good thing for you to talk about is this idea of the Bible is filled with, you can just see it, it's throughout all of it, it's like God desires peace because he is a God of peace. Mm-hmm. But I think maybe something that Christians could be helped on is understanding that at times, the only way to achieve peace in a broken, fallen world is through violence.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Yeah, I want to get into the details and nuances of it because yes, of course, we don't. I think when we call for peace, it's very much like some churches they seem to imply the same thing that we see around town, like world peace signs and this kind of stuff. And when the Bible talks about peace, it's obviously using the biblical concept of shalom, kind of an absence of hostility and a prospering of people. And in order to get to that state, you have to be a peacemaker. This is what Jesus talks about in the Sermon on the Mount. And to be a peacemaker doesn't mean you're a people pleaser.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you just are pacifistic, just trying to keep people happy so that no one ever fights. This is true in the home. Of course, not encouraging violence in the home. I'm just trying to lay out conceptually that in order to get peace, that takes work. That takes you reconciling parties. And especially at a national level, for nation states, it's going to be sometimes necessary to defend one's homeland, to secure one's interest, all this kind of stuff. And I'm assuming we'll get into the dangers of vigilantism at some point.
Yeah.
But this is kind of the biblical understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's out of the gate here, it's important that, like, we're not calling on Christians to be bloodthirsty jihadists.
No, I mean, the Bible says that's bad.
Yeah, that's bad. Like personal vengeance is a sin, Romans 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we know that kind of thing. But I also think hiding behind love your enemies is equally as sinful.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And that's what we see Christians do.
All the time.
All the time and that kind of thing. And so just a few examples of things throughout the Bible, just to kind of set the stage a little bit more, too, is we see in the Old Testament that God commands wars of conquest and defense, right? Deuteronomy 20, Joshua. Capital punishment is justice, Genesis 9:6. New Testament, Jesus tells his disciples to buy swords, right? That's Luke 22. Romans 13, we have the magistrate, again in King James, not New King James, beareth not the sword in vain,
Right.
right? As God's minister of wrath. And then I think it's also helpful then to go to the other side. I know where a lot of Christians would go is, well, what about when Jesus says to turn the other cheek?
Yes.
And I think a helpful delineation there is to go, that's referring to personal insults, not being physically attacked.
Correct, yeah.
And I think there was a prominent Christian not that long ago that said something to the effect of somebody broke into their home and was going to harm their spouse in a terrible way,
Yes.
that he would not defend her. Am I correct in
You
that?
are correct. This was John Piper. That article was scrubbed, I don't know when, but then he doubled down on it in a later article with more suspect theologizing about this passage. But yeah, this is unfortunately, it's not an uncommon attitude where many Christians get very squeamish on the legitimacy of even defending one's own spouse or children from harm if they are required to use physical violence. So yeah, that's an idea that's out there, and it needs to be dispensed of.
Well, it's funny because actually a quote from Luther would go against very much what Piper says there,
Sure.
in that where he says, this is on defense of protecting neighbor, right? Okay. And so it says, you must help protect and save your neighbor even at the risk of your own body and life, for that is what love and justice demand. And that's from Whether Soldiers Too Can Be Saved, which I got from a great new resource, Chase.
Ah, did you? I wonder what that is.
It's called Commonplace. You should get it.
Commonplace.study, everyone.
Yes. But, and then Luther also says, like, war for the sake of war is sin, but war for the sake of defense is duty, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, we see that the magisterial reformers, they weren't Anabaptist pacifists. Not at all.
Right.
Like, there is no room for that. And I know you've probably studied more of them. How do you, like, when you think of the reformers, because that's who we look back to, is kind of like, we have the early church fathers, the patristics, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think they would affirm any of this either.
No. But
particularly the reformers, when you think of them, how would they speak about this issue of violence in our modern day?
They would. It would be an assumed norm that it's acceptable and permissible to utilize our capacity for violence for virtuous ends, so long as they follow kind of the local laws of a different nation, and also, even then they would like during the English Civil War, they committed regicide against King Charles I, which is, for my Anglican friends, this is very distressing. But for, Cromwell fans, it's very exciting. And John Owen even preached a sermon to Parliament after this act was done, when they executed King Charles. And so they would have seen it as legitimate, and it was a debated topic. I think that's the other thing is, like, if you're looking for, like, one, like, consensus voice, the consensus voice is, of course, violence is part of the justice equation. The application of it is going to vary by context and, of course, by biblical doctrine and teaching. And so that's going to come into a matter of prudence and exercising any kind of capacity, when to exercise it and when to withhold the exercise of that thing.
Yeah. Well, so I maybe it'd be fun. Let's just do this. Let's just get into the question that people want. Like, okay, I'm just a dude. Mm-hmm. When is, like, so if we're submitting to the magistrate, and local laws and things like that, when is it like good to fight against a tyrant to do this? Like, you think of the American Revolution.
Sure. That's
what they would say. They were the reason that they were. It was acceptable to be violent against England was because of the tyrants. And it's interesting. Theodore Beza, who is the understudy to Calvin, right? Mm-hmm. He wrote a lot about this, actually, and he says, tyrants who violate justice lose legitimacy. Lesser magistrates may resist with force in defense of the people and true religion.
Yes.
And it's funny, I read that and I was just like, man, I really can't imagine many pastors getting up in the pulpit today and saying anything close to that.
No, I cannot either. I think it's really important because there is a strain, especially among conservatives, where we hearken back to the time of the Revolution. We have slogans, Sic Semper Tyrannis. All these things are very exciting. They call back to our history as a people, but we've lost a lot of prudence and thoughtfulness. And I do think the lack of biblical instruction, pastoral instruction on these matters has only led to unnecessary anxieties about this question. So with this question, what we're asking is, when is it permissible? The founders of our nation, they had exhausted every possible means of recourse against their grievances. So this wasn't a first stop solution. It was a last resort solution. And I think that's what is important when, first of all, our understanding of tyranny in our day is very poor. We think that anything that would inhibit our personal freedom is tyranny. Okay, that's not exactly how we should understand tyranny. Yeah. That's one issue. And then two, we'd immediately jump to kind of a Marvel superhero, Star Wars main character, I'm fighting the big bad, tyrant. When instead we should have a more mature Christian attitude of like, how can I get involved in either passive resistance? How can I write to my legislator? How can I get to know them? How can I get involved in local politics? There's tons of means to exhaust before we would ever need to get to that point. Am I trying to downplay the severity of certain people's situations or, anything like lockdowns or anything like that? Of course not. Of course not. I'm simply trying to encourage Christians to be civilizational leaders who are building up each other and encouraging one another towards righteousness and holiness and virtue, rather than just having the basic instinct where it's like, I watched The Patriot and now I am the patriot, right? Yeah. Which is totally understandable for red-blooded Americans, and I don't want to demur or suppress that kind of male energy. I want it to be channeled productively, and so we want to exhaust all resources. You also have to calculate if there's a chance of victory. This goes back to just war. This is a prudential thing, you kind of heighten the scenario with a tyrant in charge and that kind of situation. But even personally, when exercising our capacity for violence and defense, there does need to be the equation of is this actually the best application of violence? If you were in a situation where violence was happening, is it always the best option to get involved to try to stop it? Yeah. Sometimes it may not be best based on your duties and responsibilities. So I think we'd all like to be the man who lays down his life like Jesus taught us to. And at the same time, that doesn't require us in each and every situation to just basically get in the way of violence if we don't have a likely outcome of victory. My point is, a lot of this stuff takes maturity and wisdom, which is severely lacking in our day. People are looking for easy answers. Again, understandable, but we want to call Christians to maturity and thinking through these things.
Yeah, I think as a guy, it's interesting. As I've gotten older, you're just out in the world, and you see situations happening. I used to be the guy that would throw myself into the middle. Sure. To stop the thing, which actually led me into altercations and things like that have happened before. And as I've gotten older, it's I've become wiser on do I need to involve myself in this? Can I just call the police? Right. Right. Instead of going and getting into it or chasing down a car in Arkansas. Yes. Things that may or may not have happened at one point, Right. And you think about it, you've got children and your laws, and particularly in a state like ours, if you carry a weapon and you choose to use it, it's going to be very hard to rebound from that financially, personally, might go to jail. Right. There's a lot of things that you need to take into account there. And I think a lot of guys, like you're saying, they're kind of hyping it up like they're the main character in an action movie. Right. And it doesn't work out like that. It doesn't work out like that. And a lot of times in these moments where you're getting flooded with adrenaline, these are going to be hard to discern, what actions you should take. And so
even if somebody looks back on a situation, wish they had done something, or they did something, wish they hadn't, there's grace and mercy in Jesus Christ, and we want to be a place of refuge and comfort. In an ideal world, we would have a civilization, a nation where law and order was very much the norm. There would be exceptions, but we are seeing increased violence in city centers. I mean, this has been going on for 50 years, but it's spreading. And so these are just situations you need to not imagine like meditate upon, but like, put yourself in that situation and, prepare a little bit and get comfortable with your own body, go practice some kind of combat sport or something like that, so that you know how to use your body and know your capacity for violence.
Yeah, well, when I think of it like on a national level, it's very interesting. One of the reasons I wanted to do this topic was not just because we mentioned it in the sermon, but because I'm not hopeless for our nation and just looking at it and going, we're run by tyrants who can't do anything.
Sure.
Like if statistically, if Christians in the United States returned more fully back to Christ and exercised their duties of things like voting, we could actually make a very big difference, because the problems that we see in society that bring up these are we under tyrants kind of conversations to begin with are things like soft on crime policies, open borders, all of these sorts of things that lead to chaos, right? Where the magistrate is no longer exercising their duty rightfully. They're not using force any longer to make the laws actually applicable to people.
Right.
Like we're just like casting them out. I think about it in our own city. If you and I decided to go and wheel a grill down into on Pearl Street or like in front of the courthouse and just started having a grill out, the police would show up and kick us out.
Right.
But if I'm homeless,
Right.
and that's what I do, I'm like, well, I'm eating, they're just going to like let it go.
Yeah.
Right. That's dumb policy.
Correct.
And so what Christians need to do is realize, hey, if we all understand that these things are bad because the Bible tells us that we need to enforce good laws to keep safety and these sorts of things, and then we vote that way, we actually have the power to put people into power to make changes.
Totally.
And I'd even say, do I think Trump's administration has been perfect, or am I like one of those guys that's like Trump can do no bad? I'm not one of those people at all. But we've actually seen that. Like you can, like on the border, like nobody can argue, has he done a better job of securing the border than the previous administration?
Correct.
Yes, he did.
Yep.
Right? And that brings about more peace, but there was force that had to be involved. There's deportations happening.
Yeah.
Right? There's and I think it's so hard because Christians are so caught up in the niceties of Christianity that they can't see that there's good when the magistrate does these sorts of things.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and like that doesn't mean it's always perfect. That doesn't mean it's always good. Where there are either mistakes or crimes, those should be investigated. But yeah, we absolutely, I mean, it's got to be, judges particularly are for some reason so lenient towards repeat criminals. And Christians just don't talk about this stuff. And they're not educated because their pulpits are mainly silent on what justice demands for certain crimes. And then taking the Old Testament and understanding the principles behind the text and trying to encourage Christians how to think in a policy level about issues like murder or issues like abortion or issues like, capital punishment. All these things are rarely talked about, which is why we like to talk about them here and just talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if I'm thinking of listener listening to this is don't make your theological beliefs about peace and violence where you're actually putting yourself above God.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
How would you describe that to somebody? Like if you're explaining that, like what does that mean?
Well, to hold to a principle that you believe and you think is biblical, and then if you were to actually read the Bible, you would indemnify, you would find God guilty of your principle. This would be very bad behavior and bad thinking. And so when we have a principle that we've interpreted as, oh, this is what the Bible teaches, and oh no, I came across a passage in which God seems to violate that principle, we should go, I should rethink that principle and reason my way through it or ask my pastor about it or find a good resource. Most modern resources are not that helpful on these topics. But we should understand the mind of Christ, and we should submit to God and his plan of redemption and how his covenant before Christ and after Christ is similar, and yet we must distinguish between the two. And so anytime we have a principle that we hold to very dearly, like let's say you hold to pacifism as kind of the end-all be-all, or like a guiding ethos in the New Testament, well, if you were to find God or the heroes of our faith in the Old Testament guilty of your newfangled principle, then that principle to me is fairly empty, and it seems to be a novel interpretation of man that you're lording over others in order to control them, I suppose. So yeah, I would just be incredibly wary of ever trying to construct a reality in which God himself would be guilty of your so-called sins.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned kind of the heroes or fathers of our faith. I mean, you've got Luther calling for people to take up arms against the Turks and the Catholics to defend, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like Knox was not, did not avoid this sort of stuff either.
No, he was a personal bodyguard. Zwingli, I mean, many of them. And then
Zwingli died fighting the Catholics.
Yeah, and then I love the New England Puritans because they reason through these things. They're so much more intelligent often than we are today, but they had tons of literature, both about how do we minister to the Indians and how do we share the gospel with them. John Eliot translated the Bible for them and went out and formed churches in their communities to encourage them to receive Christ. And at the same time, they defended their cities, their towns and villages, and where redress was required, they would then send out soldiers to get justice. And the ministers would pray and give sermons before those excursions. And so, yeah, it's not... If you're looking for a simple principle that's just like, well, Jesus said turn the other cheek, therefore, we're not allowed to own a gun. This kind of thinking, there are words for that kind of thinking that I don't want to say on this podcast, but it's so beneath human dignity. It's so pathetic and basement-dwelling thought. Please do some reading and think more deeply on these matters. Investigate your own soul and consider the implications of what you would espouse to others. This is deeply corrupt thinking, and I would discourage anyone from believing these things. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I would say, like, if you are looking for a principle, like, these things are hard because we're dealing with people, and we're dealing with, it's almost like rare, like, when you actually, like, if you talk to a police officer and they talk about, like, something happened, there's always two sides to a story.
Sure.
Right? And they're trying to figure out what's right and wrong here, who to arrest, who not to. And they're like, it's very rarely like one person was 100% right and this person was 100% wrong.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you have to have wisdom, which is what we trust in God to give us to navigate these sorts of things. But I would say a good principle you can see throughout the Bible is that it's pretty rare that just like a normal dude like you and me would be called to be on the offense side of violence.
Correct.
It's almost always defensive.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Like that's how you see it. Like, and so if you're a person who's like going out there thinking you're starting fights justly,
right,
then you're probably not.
Yeah, it's probably not congruent with biblical teaching, except in exceptional circumstances. The other thing, I don't know if you're going to highlight this, is that when Jesus cleansed the temple and when Nehemiah was laying hands on people and I guess pulling out their hair and smoting them, a lot of the use of violence, and this gets very uncomfortable for modern people, had to do with defending right worship.
Yes.
Right? And boy, that itself is a whole can of worms that I don't think we have time to get into, but this is also how our forefathers taught as well.
Yeah.
Like they were defending not only national sovereignty, but like the virtue and holiness to keep lands from being polluted by false religion. So that's another factor in the equation, and it does reflect kind of like we do have a zeal for safety and security in our neighborhoods, in our cities, in our states, in our country. Does our zeal for that, does it match a zealousness for the name of the Lord in our worship? And that's not to pit the two against each other. It's not to Jesus juke it. It's just an interesting, reflection of like, what would it look like to be more zealous for the right worship of the living God, more so than like, other laws of the land.
Yeah, it's like, how do we practice that now? Well, it's the ministers, the elders, the church pastors, they should guard the church
right
from false teaching. And so that's done through church discipline. Or like we always say at our church, like anybody's welcome to come to our church. But if you're going to be disruptive or if you're going to try to split the flock or harm the people, we will remove you from the service.
Right, yeah.
Right? And in our modern day, that could be considered violent.
I suppose.
Right? Like with words that you use.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And things like that. And so I think it's understanding how this all plays out. I think it's also important to like point out that Nehemiah was the governor of this area. He was considered a governor of this area, and he was in charge. He had a magisterial duty to protect.
That's true.
Right? And so he was well within his rights to lay hands on.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important offices in our nation that's underappreciated is like the role of sheriff. I was explaining this to my kids the other day. A sheriff is typically a county jurisdiction that's an elected official. And you see the sheriffs in Weld County, Colorado, they're they're a lot better, I'll say it that way, oftentimes than sheriffs in blue areas. But the sheriff has a unique role in justice, and it would be wonderful to see a bunch of Christian men who understood these principles and understood prudence and wisdom and biblical teaching to aspire to become a sheriff and enforce the law that are the laws of the land, but do so with kind of Christian and manly virtue as well. That would be a blessing to our county. It would be a blessing to our state if we had more of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think of it as blessed are the peacemakers, but I'm kind of like, we need some men that are willing to fight to be peacemakers.
Yeah, they got to get in the game.
And we've got to go for it. So like in a day-to-day life I'm mainly talking to the guys because that is their responsibility to defend. Now, I understand that they're single women and they need to understand these sorts of things as well.
Yep.
But like I think especially men need to be thinking through, how do I defend my family or those in my care or those weaker than me?
Yep.
And am I a prepared person to do so if I was called upon to do just that?
Right.
Right? Like thinking through your home and how things work and even just what you let into your home.
Yep.
It doesn't always have to be a bad guy breaking in.
Right.
Someone that's coming in straight through the internet.
Right.
Right? Like you must learn how to defend well. Or even just in our church, like I think of it, like we have great men who care for our body in a defensive way on a Sunday to make sure that our people are safe.
Right.
This is good and right. It might be unsettling to some people, but we can't bury our head in the sand around the world in which we live.
Yep. Amen.
Yeah. What else?
I think that's it.
That's it.
You've exhausted all the resources I'm able to bring at this time.
I did have in here on my notes for the church. What would be the key for this is stop feminized sermons. And then on the nation, support leaders who wield the sword biblically.
Yes and amen. And the feminized sermon is a real problem. And I think most people have been so overwhelmed with feminized sermons. When they see a masculine sermon, which is assertive, plain spoken, they find it very off-putting to them, and they want more emotive. It's funny, I watch these Instagram reels from Christians that tease about preachers, and I like it because it's kind of self-effacing. But they'll talk about the cadence of preachers, and I'm fascinated by that stuff because you can see it all over the place. When we were coming up in Young, Restless, Reformed, Acts 29 stuff, a lot of guys would try to mimic like Mark Driscoll or somebody like that, or Matt Chandler, or they would try to be Tim Keller or whoever it is. But you see it in the pulpit oftentimes with their cadence. They'll go like, the other day I was at a coffee shop and I was thinking, and it's like a predictable pattern of speech that's often highly nuanced, very opaque, unclear, and emotive to try to gin people up for stuff. Anyways, but the feminized pulpit is a major problem.
Yes, absolutely. And don't worry, we won't do that anytime soon. So, all right, well, that is it. And if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out. We would love to chat with you more about this. You can leave that in the comments, or you can ask us on a Sunday. So with all that being said, thanks for joining us. Share this episode with a friend, and until next time.